Projector. Speak to me.
There's a power button on the side. Left side.
Aha! You kill it? Yes, you did. Awesome. No, I didn't know you did. I didn't know you did. Well, that's good. So my big thing's been water. I've been fortunate to work in the Indiana community, and the biggest issue we have with Indiana and water issues is water quality. So the thing is, in urban areas like we have here in Lafayette, West Lafayette, if the water hits the ground, it's going to really do one of two things. One, if it hits some green space, it'll infiltrate into the soil and it'll stay where it's at. Otherwise, it'll hit an impervious surface, like pavement, a house, a road, and it'll just whisk right away, go into our systems. Our sewer systems end up getting overwhelmed, and we have pretty bad water quality issues in our lakes, rivers, and streams around here. So, we increase this impervious surface, and it just becomes worse and worse and worse. So, there are ways to resolve this, and they're called best management practices, so they help keep the water on the land, in the soil, staying where it's at, instead of being whooshed away off to the system that's overloaded. So there's a few examples of things that I've got. I've got rain barrels on the top left, which I'll be talking about. I've got pervious pavers on the bottom left, and I've got rain gardens on the far right. But our research here is centered around rain barrels. So there's a lot of governments, there's a lot of nonprofit groups who are trying to promote these as solutions or as ways to help solve some of our water quality problems. But there's a few things these groups don't know that we're trying to help them find out. First off, why do people adopt rain barrels? Why do they put them in the first place? Second off, why do people maintain the rain barrels? So after years of time go by, why do these people continue putting them up year after year? Or if they stop, why have they stopped? And finally, diffusion. So do these people talk with others in their community about rain barrels? What is the effect of that? Are these people installing rain barrels as a result of these conversations? Are they not? And what may be contributing to that? So our research is focused in two watersheds. The first one we all probably know pretty well. It's our watershed, the region of the Great Bend of the Wabash River watershed that contains the cities of West Lafayette and Lafayette. I also studied the Salt Creek watershed, which is up in northern Indiana, which contains the city of Valparaiso. So we had a bunch of different ways we were trying to get at this. One that I won't cover in my thesis is a mail survey. So we sent a mail survey to everyone who owned a rain barrel here and in Salt Creek, and we got responses on that. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'll talk about two others. The first one is a rain barrel assessment. So over the summer, we went and looked at a bunch of rain barrels, and we kind of scored them, and we judged them based on a bunch of criteria. First off, is the rain barrel there? Can we see it? Second off, is it connected to a downspout or a roof overflow so it can collect water? Third, is it on a stand? Fourth, does it have any holes in the barrel itself or on the screen? Fifth, does it have hoses at the bottom? Is there a way to get the water out of the barrel? And lastly, about how full is it? So with that information, we were able to put them on kind of an index scale that goes from 0 to 3. 0 is the barrel wasn't installed. It doesn't look like there's any effort that they made to install the barrel. It might be there, but it's under the deck. It's not connected to a roof overflow. It's useless. Number 1 is it's installed, but it doesn't fill up with water, so it's also still kind of useless. But they tried. So it's connected to a roof overflow, but it's running uphill, or it's got a crack in the barrel that it's not able to completely fill up with water. Number 2 is acceptable, so it's not perfect, but at least it fills up with water. So it fills up with water. The issues are it's harder to use. One, it might not be on a stand because the rain barrel empties by gravity. If it's not on a stand, it's kind of hard to get the water out. Also, if you've got cracks on the top on the screen, you can have a mosquito issue, and that's really no fun for anybody. It's kind of hard to use it. Number 3 is basically perfect. So it's on a stand, there's no holes, it fills with water, you can use it, all is well in the world. There's kind of 2 types of rain barrels that we saw. So up in Salt Creek, they had a rain barrel that looks like this. They got theirs in 2008, 2009. There's 2 things I want you to take notice of. First off, on the top, the downspout is just direct. So the water just flies right out of the downspout from the gutters on the roof and enters the rain barrel. Second, they have to have one of these exit hoses on the bottom, so that black hose. There's no spigot or anything, so without that hose, the barrel doesn't work at all. These are the barrels rainbarrels that are more common around here. Hopefully you've seen a few around town. They're the ones that are here in the Great Bend of the Wabash River watershed. And they have downspouts that you can connect it two ways. So one is just direct on the right, like you saw in the first picture. The second one is kind of through a special device that brings it in through a hose, which is really nice, which is the picture on the left. These ones, they have a spigot on the bottom, so they don't require an exit hose. You can just open the spigot and the water comes out. And also, I forgot to bring my prop. Out here in the Great Bend of the Wabash River, a bunch of people have signs in their yard, and they look like that, and I have one here for size. So these, you can, with your rain barrel, you can get a sign and you put it out in the front of your yard. You know, I've got a rain barrel, I'm an eco champion, I'm helping to protect the Wabash River. So we have these signs, I leave there. And we also took note of that, whether or not these people had a sign or not in their yard. So besides the assessments, we also did interviews with 30 people up in the Salt Creek watershed. So we asked them questions we kind of couldn't get in the mail survey. So more, how did you hear about the program? What do you use your rain barrel for? Why did you adopt it in the first place? Have you talked to anybody? So we were able to really kind of directly get at those by asking them. And here's what we found out so far. So with the assessments, one thing we thought was interesting was the comparison of location. So in the region of the Great Bend of the Wabash River, our average score was 2.19. In Salt Creek, it was way lower at 1.74. That is a significant difference. We think that maybe a big reason of this is just kind of the timing. So the Salt Creek, they had their program in 2009. The region of the Great Bend of the Wabash River had their program in 2012. So it's been longer for Salt Creek than it has for this watershed. So we're thinking that people have stopped installing their rain barrels after a few years, and also people are moving away. So after a while in Salt Creek, after visiting these people and they didn't have a rain barrel, we started asking them, like, when did you move here? And they started telling us, like, 2011. Like, oh, well, you never had a chance to participate in the program. So that's one reason we think there's a lot with the score of absolute 0. Second off, we found out that having these little blue signs, I'm an eco champion, it actually has a huge impact on rain barrel maintenance after a couple of years. So, you know, the people with the signs in their yards, their score was 2.69. People without the sign, it was a tiny low 1.43. So the signs are a big deal. We think that, you know, the reason that these people really maintain that is that these signs kind of put this value, right? I'm a person who protects the Wabash River. I'm a person who's an eco champion. So they really feel this obligation to take care of their rain barrel, keep putting it up, really live to their sign. And then also kind of results for the interview. I wanted to let you know that these 30 people, you know, we called them, they kind of selected themselves. It wasn't like a random selection as a survey would be. So their average scores for the rain barrels are higher than the people who decided not to be interviewed. But you'll notice we do have 8 people that I interviewed that they didn't have their rain barrel up for one reason or another. Some people, they never put them up. Some people, they put them up and stopped. It was too inconvenient. There was one guy whose rain barrel cracked. There was one who just moved. She had just kind of changed houses, and she was still working on putting up a rain barrel. So here's what we found out from the interview. At the time, about half of the people heard about the rain barrel cost share program from the newspaper, and about probably a third of them heard from another organization. So not necessarily from the nonprofit group Save the Dunes, but perhaps from the county, from another environmental group of land trusts they were working with. A lot, and by a lot, I mean all the people really use their rain barrels primarily for gardening. So 28 out of the 30 people we talked to said, you know, their primary motivator for putting these things in was gardening. The other 2, well, they never put their rain barrels up, so that's not really too much of a surprise. But those other 2 people did have gardens. So I think that was their thought when they bought it, and then they just never put it up, so they never talked to us about it. But gardening is very, very big. Problems maintaining the rain barrel kind of run the gamut. Problems all over the place. People have issues with the water pressure. A lot of people had issues with their hoses on the bottom of those rain barrels without the spigots. Just all kinds of different trouble. People had them cracking. So maintenance problems kind of run the course. There's nothing super common amongst those. But people talking to the rain barrel, we had about 75% of our interviewees say they talked to somebody about the rain barrel. Somebody saw it, hey, what's this? And about 60% of those people, so of the 75, 60% of those, they ended up seeing a positive result. So because they talked to somebody, somebody else put in a barrel. So that's pretty good. It's getting out there, so if people can keep talking about it, that's really important. About 12 of the 30 people had some other stormwater practice. I'm not sure which they had first, but they're starting somewhere. They have the rain barrel and then they have something else. So there's kind of a relation there. Some of the examples are rain gardens, which I've got in the picture, native plants, trees. Those are kind of the main ones you saw. Most of them were plant-related, less pervious neighbors up north. And these people were also extremely active in their community. So I think about 26 of the 30 said they did something. So it was either an individual environmental action, they were recycling at home. They really said, we don't use any pesticides. They were very clear about that. They did a community environmental group of some sort. They were involved in a community group, or they were just involved in some other civic action. They were perhaps, on city council. There was one lady who worked with a cat shelter. They were involved somehow. The 4 who told me they weren't involved, most of those really didn't have a rain barrel on them. So there may be some of these people are involved and they're really excited to get involved and they're doing good things for their community. So where do we go from here? What's next? What can we do with this information? So, this information is really meant to be brought out to to nonprofit groups, to governments, to people who can really use it. So it's nice that it connects kind of with my political science background. This is a policy program. This is a kind of a policy issue. This is also just an issue of communication. So we really want better communication. We're hoping that will be an outcome of this. So for getting people to adopt rain barrels, we really need to purposely reach out to the folks in gardening areas, garden shows, magazines, and really make sure we're getting them there and showing those benefits. As far as maintenance goes, because the issues run all over the place, it might be good to have an email or a web page set up with answers on some of these questions people have. I don't know why this issue is happening. Can you help me answer it? So having a web page or the link would be good. And then as far as some of the cracking and stuff goes, having emails before the winter. You might want to put your rain barrel away. If you don't, it's going to crack. That will be something important to do. Before I get off, and we'll take your questions in a little bit, I have a ton of people that I'm very, very thankful for this research. If I were to do all 4 years, we'd be here all day. But I've gotten an awesome lab. I was very fortunate to work with the Procopy Lab over the summer and into this year. What a fun, inclusive group of people. I've been fortunate also to work with Wabash River Enhancement Corporation and Save the Dunes. They're the 2 nonprofit groups who were kind of helping out with this research. REC has been a huge help helping me work on this assessment data. And then, of course, none of this would have happened without some funding, driving up and down to Valparaiso all the time. So we were funded by the Sea Grant and by the Indiana Water Resources Research Center. Thank you.